Like O Muircheartaigh, good hurlers, they'll descend upon us from the mountains behind us and in front of us. Agus an gúsin, tá misisiú chun achimar a garid a hútíh scéal na hamána. And I know we have strangers, or what we'd call people from other countries, tá siad in our mask. As in Céadro the Déir the men now, the game of hurling is the oldest field game in the world. It's the only game that's played both in heaven and on earth. And we have a lot of evidence of that going back to Shanachas and Scalia. I called to see Padder here maybe cúpla seachtain ó hin. I wasn't quite sure what he meant in the lovely letter he sent me about this wonderful night. As the bhairteach me cúid de hútear chun míú dáil cad a bhí geistige. As ó bheithim hí síos an sin le cúplód a chuig, an príomh smaoine a bhúil me ná go maireann seán ó riad a go fóil. Ní bhúr sé bás riamh, tá sé an ár measc anoch, agus be sé measc na naoine fad a bheith gailge agus a máint in san tír seo. But coming up along the road with Padder, we stopped at the corner of a field. Bhí sé lán dá riar and he said, this is where the last hurling game was played with the Tuathail, chea, Chorcaí and the fairy folk of Limerick. And he said it was the last time that a human took part in the match, because when the Limerick hurlers arrived they were one short. She had shees and boher, and there was a man who wasn't in the best of health for a while, living alone, but the neighbours used called to see him every day. But they noticed that every day he was black and blue and sometimes wounded, and they didn't believe him when he was telling them, I gave the night hurling in the field up at the corner. And that's the last recorded game of hurling in which a man from Cooley played with the people from the other world, wherever the other world is. Péad Martin sé, the first definite knowledge we have of O Muircheartaigh á Himmert, Cá Má Tire, the Battle of Má Tire, and that was fought in 1272 BC. And the Tuathail were playing the Firvolg, and territory was the prize. And it was a real battle that was fought on the first day of the 6th week of summer. And in those days prior to a battle, they had a warm-up, and the warm-up was a game of hurling. And a game of hurling was played, as tá sé in St. Tanachus, the bhí 3 naonúr an taobh, 27 aside. It began at midnight and it finished with the breaking of the dawn. As tá sé sin in St. Shanachus, so that's one bit of evidence of how old the game of hurling is. Tá táscail ar coma, nuair chuireadh tús le Claí Taillte, the Tailtean Games. And the first of the Tailtean Games took place in the year of the world 3370, and that's not today nor yesterday. The Viamont down, we are awaiting the birthday of Lou, Martin Moirach, and 'twas Lou, a Tuathail king, that brought or convened the Tailtean Games on the hill of Taillte cúnt enemy. The bhí 3 múradaí ann. The tháinig siad le chéile chun rialacha, a lasso, chun rialacha nua chun a bhaim, but there was also a sporting theme to it, and the 3 major sporting events, chariot racing, horse racing and hurling. 3370, the year of the world. Bochamid Aig mar níla gomach seach nómatí, the tháinig an Christíoch, and hurling survived the arrival of Christianity. And then the wonderful years we had after that, the times of the Brehon laws, the 6th and 7th centuries AD, the rules of hurling were protected by the laws, the Brehon laws. The Vishaun, the Hornig na Nordmanig, agus Dowlamemor Galera Spoil, they became more Irish than the Irish themselves. The Hogadar and Gaelge, the Hogadar and Credib, the Hogadar na Clahi, agus the Viana Ganner Fadaka than amount. So the amount was the common theme running right through. The Vishako Lauder Shin, aus the sport in Snatirala, our neighbours in England and Scotland and Wales, they were also sporting nations. And sport was such a threat around the 13th century that in the year 1365 a law was passed forbidding any group of people to come together henceforth for the purpose of organising sport. And hurling and different types of other sports, they were all banned by law. And that ban on sport lasted for 500 years until 1845, the times of the famine. Ach ní heshin le rán ach revan amount or Himmerton Tower Fad, and the greatest lawbreakers of all, by keeping to playing the hurling in particular, were the ruling classes themselves. And for at least 2 centuries, every landlord that was worth the title kept a hurling team. There were professional players, and the landlords put up purses like 100 guineas, barrels of beer agus na ruddy sin galair, as the firnamane gach tír na talún goya moon agus goya lion. They organised their own tournaments in the lawns of the big houses. The cúichi do áit go háit, like the golfers do nowadays, with a sort of a tour, as the Vietnamand on a larger fog. As the far on a himúlar fog, he gets a full chapter in that wonderful book, Scale na Hmana leis an Bráthir ó Cania. His name was John Cuff. He was born in 1730. He was Viscount Dysart. He was an MP. As vi anachá lermar Omani. And the strangest thing of all, he had another name when he went out as a hurler. He was known as Sean a Chapeen. And he hurled all over Kilkenny, Tipperary, North Cork, agus na Hartiga Sin Galair, Corhaile go raibh na tíornaí talún an a bháúil den gluthe amánaíochta. Lanhamid Araig, the ban went in 1845-46, and it was okay from then on to organise sport. And among the sporting bodies that came to being in those times, Hornig Cumann Luke Glasgow in the year 1884, and hurling from then on, it had an organisation to look after it. The first All-Ireland Championships were played in 1887, but after agreeing to have and to stage All-Ireland Championships, the GA just said to themselves, we have organised, but where will we play them? They didn't own a pitch near a Port Cooley on Eganown. The Merkshe the first All-Ireland Championship ever would have been played here. It wasn't here. And who came to the rescue for the first match ever played in the first ever All-Ireland final? It was Lord de French, who had a vast estate where Ellen Park Hospital stands in Dublin, Ellen Park Golf Club and St Vincent's Hospital, and Norton will sheath and Shinanish. Shine Norton Imriag on Caird Cleha Amana, den Caird All Ireland Imriag Rio. The Vian Cleha Canish in Mura. On the 1st of April 1888, the first ever All-Ireland final was played, and they've been held every year since then, with the exception of 1888. Tá cáil mhúr an amáint, tá sé chomhaláin agus a bhí sé riamh. Tá mise fécant amáint, agus tagan mise chunta chiaí, the home of football, but I would say hurling is a superior game to any game that I have seen anywhere in the world. Mata sé na mílte blian eile tásúlagam. Agus maidin an bord seo Port Cooley, be gimróri a búl yn glitter leis na Cymain, agus fácha me sib leis an classúnta go bhí ge Cú Cullen. And Cú Cullen was the godson of Lou. Agus sin endin ar a llí go dtí áin vaca, bhí trí rod in a helib nuair a hosnig sé ar an tros. Da bhí Cymain aige, da bhí slitter aige, agus da bhí slá aige. As an céad rod a dhéan sé ná, da bhúil sé ropt an Cymain ar an slitter agus cúil sé go háirt san éir agus a bhad amach go bhí. An son de chas sé a Cymain in a dhéig, agus an son de helig sé an slá, agus a bhé leis ar lán sadar, agus de rug sé ar na trí chin le chéile, agus de bhúil sé an slitter san éir a ríis, de chas sé an Cymain, de helig sé an slá, agus mar sin a bhí go chris sé áin vaca. Agus má chuig duine, hí sa lisbóla gír a dhéana ó bhun go bád an stricín in 8:90, ní dólamsa gur thóg sé 18 minutes ar Cú Cullen áin vaca a bhainteach. A cháide, tá lán seód agin. Agus beidir gur bheith seán á riad a thugaid go léir le chéile leis an inspiráid a chrochaid sé. Tá teangan na Gaeilge gin, tá ceol na Gaeilge gin, tá rincí Gaelach agin, tá chluichí Gaelach agin, agus le cúnamh dé tá sprid an Gaelach an an go léir go fóil. A cháide is úntaach an ó cáide seo, tá súlagan go méid go léir an seo go maidin, is fearlan dalhhailin sin as má bhí an cuid agin a go ceistear an héin, chad an tarbh bhaine mar as aníthe, chur ceistear go éigean eile bhí an sá. Gur a míle maithagad agus go mar isib go léir céad bliain. Gur maithagad.